Shalom and welcome to the Yehoshua Rose channel here on YouTube. My name is Daniel, and in today's video I'd like to take a look at a biblical day. What is a day? When does it begin? And when does it end? So I have a few good friends on Facebook whom I love and respect very much, and I've seen this topic come up a few times. And I'm just not sure why or how it gets to this, because from what I see in the scriptures, a day clearly and unequivocally begins in the evening. And so let's go through it. I will show many proofs. Some of them will be logical, where we will draw conclusions. Others will be solid. It's just indisputable. So let's begin. Let's go back to the beginning. Genesis chapter 1, in the beginning God created the heaven and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters, and God said, "Let there be light." So we begin with darkness. God's first words he utters in creation are, "Let there be light." Darkness, the light is the darkness is followed by light. And there was light, and God saw the light, that it was good, and God divided the light from the darkness. He called the light day, and the darkness he called night, and the evening and the morning were the first day. Evening being the darkness, morning being the light. The evening and the morning were the first day. This becomes the example all through the creative week. Every day is the same thing. The second day, and God called the firmament heaven, and the evening and the morning were the second day. It never changes, it never goes, and the morning and the evening were the third day. No, they're all the same. They're all evening first, and morning second. When we come down to the fourth day, where God created the lights in the firmament, in verse 14 of chapter 1 here in Genesis, it says, "And God said, Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven, to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs, and for seasons, and for days, and for years." So we have something in the sky, in the heavens, which is giving us an indication of when the days begin and when they end. So when we go to the law of Jehovah, and specifically the feast days of Jehovah, we see commanded in Leviticus chapter 23, verse 24, "Speak unto the children of Israel, saying, In the 7th month, in the first day of the month, shall ye have a Sabbath, a memorial of blowing of trumpets, and holy convocation. You shall do no servile work therein, but you shall offer an offering made by fire unto Jehovah." This is the Feast of Trumpets, or Yom Teruah, and this is the first day of the 7th month, and the way this first day of the 7th month is reckoned, and for that matter, every first day of a month, whether the 7th month or any other month, they are reckoned according to the new moon. And these become the new moon days. They're reckoned in ancient Israel by the sighting of the crescent, the first crescent sliver of the moon after it goes completely dark for those day or twos. And this is sighted right after the sun goes down in the evening. So when that sliver is located and witnessed by 2 witnesses, brought to the council of the Sanhedrin, and verified, it becomes a new moon day. That evening and that morning which follows. The evening and the morning are the first day. And that's the way the new moons work. That's the way every day works. But let's continue. So now we have in the 10th month, that same month, later on in the month, we have the Day of Atonement. Continuing here in verse 26, and Jehovah spake unto Moses, saying, Also On the 10th day of this 7th month there shall be a day of atonement. It shall be a holy convocation unto you, and ye shall afflict your souls, and offer an offering made by fire unto Jehovah. And ye shall do no work in that same day, for it is the day of atonement, to make an atonement for you before Jehovah your God. For whatsoever soul it be that shall not be afflicted in that same day, he shall be cut off from among his people. And whatsoever soul it be that doeth any work in the same day, the same soul will I destroy from among his people. Ye shall do no manner of work. It shall be a statute forever, throughout your generations, in all of your dwellings. It shall be a Sabbath of rest, and ye shall afflict your souls. In the 9th day of the month, at even, from even unto even, shall ye celebrate your Sabbath. So in this 10th month, on the 9th day of the month, in the late afternoon, at evening, and continuing on to the next evening, which would be evening and the morning, the same pattern we'll see over and over and over again. This is the day. So I've had people argue and say, well, this day is special. It's different than all the other days of the year. A biblical day starts in the morning and ends in the next morning. And they say, well, this one particular day is an exception. That's not even logical, doesn't make any sense. So you're telling me that a morning which begins on the 8th day, you begin your day in the morning of the 8th day. The 8th day runs from morning and ends in the evening, the morning of the 9th day. So now the 9th day, you start your day in the morning, and it only goes until the evening. So you're telling me that there's only a 12-hour 9th day every year. The 9th day of the 10th month is only 12 hours long or less. And then you have the Day of Atonement, which runs from evening to evening as commanded here. So you would go from a 12-hour 9th day to a 24-hour 10th day in conforming with this commandment. And now how do you get back on cycle? So you have a 12-hour 9th day, a 24-hour Day of Atonement, and now you're 12 hours out of whack. So the 11th day now begins in the evening and goes into the morning, would make it a 24-hour day. But now you're going to have to go all the way back to the evening again, so you have a 36-hour day to get back on cycle. So you're telling me every year and year by year, you have a 12-hour 9th day, a 24-hour Day of Atonement, and then a 36-hour 11th day of the month to get you back on your schedule, making the 12th day 24 hours again. And every year you're going to do this. Tell me, does that sound logical and reasonable to you? I think not. Okay, let's move on to the story in Nehemiah or Nehemiah 13. Nehemiah is in Jerusalem after the wall is built, and it says, "In those days saw I in Judah some treading wine presses on the Sabbath, and bringing in sheaves, and lading asses, and as also wine, grapes, and figs, and all manner of burdens, which they brought into Jerusalem on the Sabbath day. And I testified against them in the day wherein they sold victuals. There dwelt men of Tyre there also therein, which brought fish, and all manner of ware, and sold on the Sabbath day unto the children of Judah, and in Jerusalem. Then I contended with the nobles, and said unto them, What evil thing is this that ye do, and profane the Sabbath day? Did not your fathers thus, and did not our God bring all this evil upon us and upon this city? Yet ye bring more wrath upon Israel by profaning the Sabbath. And it came to pass that when the gates of Jerusalem began to be dark before the Sabbath, I commanded that the gates should be shut, and charged that they should not be opened until after the Sabbath. And some of my servants set I at the gates, that there should be no burden be brought in on the Sabbath day." So Nehemiah's solution to rectify the situation is to shut the gates of Jerusalem in the beginning of the Sabbath, before the Sabbath, as it began to be dark. This word in Hebrew is a word which means shadowing. It's referring to the late afternoon. As a matter of fact, let me go to the concordance and we'll look at this a little more closely. Okay, so here we have it pulled up on the Blue Letter Bible, the concordance, and it came to pass that when the gates of Jerusalem began to be dark, comes from this one Hebrew word, H6751. We click on that, and let's see what this word actually means. Began to be dark is the this word right here, salal. It's a verb, and it means began. It's translated. It's only used twice. It means began to be dark or shadowing. To be or become or grow dark. To become or grow dark. You can see a little more clearly in the Genesius Hebrew Chaldee lexicon. To be shaded or dusky. The only way you can have shadows is to have light casting that shadow, and that would be in the late afternoon. So it's pretty clear from this example here, and it came to pass that when the gates of Jerusalem began to be dark, or were shadowing, before the Sabbath, which will be the evening when the sun goes down, I commanded that the gates should be shut, and charged that they should not be opened till after the Sabbath. It's pretty clear from this example that the Sabbath is beginning in the evening. Let us move on to the Messiah. All right, so the Messiah states here in John chapter 11, verse 9, Jesus answered, Are there not 12 hours in the day? If any man walk in the day, he stumbleth not, because he seeth the light of the world. So some use this verse and will contend that a day is only the daylight hours of a 24-hour period. Okay, well, obviously there are 12 hours in a day. Obviously this is an average as the sun and moon travel between the tropics through the year. Some days are obviously not 12 hours. They are 8 hours at some points and 14 hours at others. Obviously this is an average. There are 12 hours in a day. A day is 24 hours long as reckoned by the sun. Let me revisit that for a second. The sun is the luminary in the firmament which determines a day. When it goes down, begins a day until the next cycle when it goes down again. The new moon is reckoning, the moon, the crescent sliver that I talked about earlier, is reckoning the month, the beginning of the month. It is the sun which reckons the day from day to day. As it goes down, it becomes a new day. So the Messiah answers here, are there not 12 hours in the day? The day being the daylight hours of a day. There are 2 days described in the Bible. There is a 24-hour period and there is a 12-hour period. And those are used as needed. And the meaning is shown by the context of the verses being used. Let's move on to some more words that the Messiah has to give us. I'll tell you, there is no greater wisdom given than the life and example of the Messiah, Yehoshua or Jesus Christ. There are things in the law which may be unclear. They're actually not unclear. They've been obscured by the Pharisees or over time traditions, and they are cleared up by the example the Messiah gave us in his life. He is the key to understanding the law. So let us visit the night of his betrayal, the day before he is crucified, or actually the day he is crucified. So let's make sure of the setting here. This is Mark chapter 14, and we're going to start right here in verse 17, and it says, And in the evening he cometh with the 12. This is when they were going to eat the Last Supper. It is already evening. This is the night of the 14th. And as they sat and did eat, Jesus said, Verily I say unto you, one of you which eateth with me shall betray me. And let's see, well, there's quite a bit to read here, so I'm going to skip down, but just the reason I started there was to show that this is already in the evening when this is all taking place. And let's go to verse 26. And when they had sung an hymn, they went out into the Mount of Olives. And Jesus saith unto them, All of ye shall be offended because of me this night. We're in the evening, this night. For it is written, I will smite the shepherd, and the sheep shall be scattered. This is a reference to Zechariah. And he says, But after that I am risen, I will go before you into Galilee. But Peter said unto him, Although all shall be offended, yet will I not. Although all shall be offended, yet will not I. And Jesus saith unto him, Verily, or truly I say unto you, or unto thee, truly I say unto you, or verily I say unto thee, that this day, even in this night, before the cock crow twice, thou shalt deny me 3 times, or thrice. So, what are we learning here? We see that it is already evening, that the Messiah says that in this day, referring to a 24-hour period, and now being even more specific, even in this night, is not going to be sometime today, not within this 24-hour period. It's going to be in this 12-hour period, which began already. We're already in it, even in this night. Now, I've had some contest and say that, well, this makes perfect sense. This is the day began in the morning. And this is the end of that day, the evening part. Well, that doesn't make sense to me. Because there's no reason to say that this day, there's no reason to add even in this night. Because if they have the understanding that the day had already begun in the morning that morning, and now they were finishing they've already lived through the light of that day, and now they're in the nighttime, then why does he even need to say even in this night? It doesn't need to be said. All he needs to say is this day. If they have the understanding that the day started in the morning and it's going to end in a few hours when the sun rises, then all he has to say is this day. Because that's all that's left of that day is a few hours of light, darkness. Maybe 8, 10, 12 hours of darkness. I'd say 8 to 10. But no, they have the understanding that the day started in that evening. And that's why he clarified that this day, even in this night, before the cock crows twice, thou shalt deny me thrice. So this is more a proof of logic. I will ask you to be reasonable here. Does that make any sense if the day began in the morning? To use this phrasing doesn't make any sense to me. It makes perfect sense to me if the day began in that evening. Let us move on to his crucifixion. And now we're in the daytime following that Last Supper when Jesus was crucified. When the Messiah was crucified, when the evening was come, there came a rich man of Arimathea named Joseph, who also himself was Jesus' disciple. He went to Pilate and begged the body of Jesus. Then Pilate commanded the body to be delivered. And when Joseph had taken the body, he wrapped it in a clean linen cloth and laid it in his own new tomb, which he had hewn out in the rock, and he rolled a great stone to the door of the sepulchre and departed. And there was Mary Magdalene and the other Mary sitting over against the sepulchre. Now the next day, well, that goes on to something. So that's the scene right there. It says, when the evening was come, and some may say, well, that was when it was dark. That's not what it says. Let's go to the concordance for that same verse. When the even, we'll find out that this word basically means the same thing as the Hebrew word that we saw earlier. Opsios, Greek word, G3798. It means, let me see, it's used 15 times. evening, in the evening, eventide, evening, and it means late. Late afternoon, I will contend, evening, either from 3 to 6 o'clock p.m. Obviously, this is late afternoon, from 3 to 6 o'clock p.m. From 6 o'clock p.m. to the beginning of night, that would be in the summer months. So it is before the night to the beginning of the night. So it is not nighttime. This word means late afternoon, and I think we can see this even better when we go to the other example in Luke 23. This man, Joseph of Arimathea, went unto Pilate and begged the body of Jesus. He took it down and wrapped it in the linen and laid it in a sepulchre that was hewn in stone, wherein never man before was laid. And that day was the preparation, the Passover. The Passover is the preparation. We'll see this when we go to the law later. And the Sabbath drew on. It was not the Sabbath yet. He was put in the grave before the Sabbath. And the women also which came with him from Galilee followed after and beheld the sepulchre, and how his body was laid. And they returned and prepared spices and ointments, and rested the Sabbath day according to the commandment. These were good people. These were fine Christian folk. They knew the law of their God. They knew that his body had to be off the cross before the evening. This is in accordance with the law also. I won't go to that specifically. Let us move on. It is clear from these two verses that he was removed in the late afternoon and put in the grave before the Sabbath day. I've heard some argue that, well, they said there was 100 pounds of ointment used to prepare the body. Don't you realize that this process would take hours and hours and hours? I'll tell you, it is amazing what men can do when they put their mind to it. Joseph of Arimathea and Nicodemus are both on the Sanhedrin. They are both Pharisees. They are both men of means. They are both men of money and servants. They could have easily sent their servants in anticipation of his death back to retrieve everything that was necessary and met them back in the site and performed these tasks well before the Sabbath day drew on. This is a weak argument, and I reject that also. Let us move on to the law. I have saved the clearest proof that I have from the Bible we will find in the example of the Passover, from the original Passover that the Israelites held when leaving Egypt. Okay, we're here in Exodus chapter 12, and this is the story of the first Passover. The nation of Israel is in Egypt, and they're getting ready to leave this day. So, beginning, this is a very long chapter. I'm just going to hit the highlights. I would highly recommend, if you are not familiar with the law of Jehovah or the Passover, that you go to this video right here, the sign of Jonah. This video right here. It will explain the order of events for the Passover, for the Feast of Unleavened Bread, for first fruits, for the springtime feast. It gives the exact order of events and all the time frames that are involved. I'm just going to hit the highlights in this video to show you that the day that this event demonstrates clearly and with certainty and without ambiguity that the day begins in the evening. So let's briefly cover the outline of the Passover feast. The Passover itself, the day, the 14th day of the month, well, let's start here. And Jehovah spake unto Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, this month, obviously this is a new moon, or this month that has already begun, what is now being called the first month. It is the month of Aviv. It is the beginning of months, or the first of the year. It shall be the first month of the year to you. Speak unto the congregation of Israel in the 10th day of the month. They shall take to them every man a lamb according to the house of their fathers, and a lamb for a house. Your lamb shall be without blemish, a male of the first year. He shall take it from among the sheep or from the goats, and he shall keep it until the 14th day of the same month. And the whole assembly of the congregation of Israel shall kill it in the evening. So, you choose the lamb on the 10th month. This, by the way, these feasts are shadows and types which are fulfilled perfectly by the Messiah. He enters Jerusalem on the 10th month. That's when he is chosen, as he beats the high priest back to the gates of the city while he's choosing the Passover lamb, and that's when he is hailed as the king, hailed as the one who comes in the name of Jehovah with the palm branches. He is tested over the next 4 days. He is arguing with the Pharisees and everybody in the temple. And he is killed on the 14th day in the evening. He dies at 3 p.m. But that's a subject for another story. That's also in that other video that I just referenced. And so they're going to take the blood of that lamb that they kill and put it on the 2 side posts of their house and the upper lintel. And that night, Jehovah is going to come through Egypt and kill all the firstborn. Man, of sheep, and of cattle. And anywhere, this blood on the doorpost will protect the Israelites from the destroying angel that is passing through. What we're going to show in this example, and then when they eat it, they're going to flesh it. They're going to eat the flesh in that night, roast with fire and unleavened bread. So they're killing it in the evening or the late afternoon, and they're eating it that night. So now we're going to see, is there a separation of days here, or is that night a different day? We're killing it. They're killing it in the evening of the 14th day. 14th day. In the evening, they're killing the lamb, and then they're striking the post of the house with the blood, and they're eating it that night. When they eat it, they're going to eat it with their loins girded, shoes on their feet, and staff in hand. And they shall eat it in haste. They're going to eat it rapidly, because it is the Lord's Passover. And he says, for I will pass through the land of Egypt that night, this night, and will smite all the firstborn of the land of Egypt, both man and beast, and against all the gods of Egypt I will execute judgment. I am Jehovah. And the blood shall be to you for a token upon the houses where you are, and when I see the blood I will pass over you. That's why it's called Passover. And the plague shall not be upon you to destroy you when I smite the land of Egypt. And this day shall be unto you for a memorial. And ye shall keep it a feast to Jehovah throughout your generations. Ye shall keep it a feast by an ordinance forever. 7 days shall ye eat unleavened bread. Even the first day ye shall put away leaven out of your houses. For whosoever eateth unleavened bread from the first day unto the 7th day, that soul shall be cut off from Israel. And the first day shall be a holy convocation, and in the 7th day there shall be a holy convocation to you. No manner of work shall be done in them, save that which every man must eat. That only may be done of you. So there is an exception to this command. Now I want to go back to this verse up here. This day shall be a memorial for you. I'm going to go over here to the Chabad website, the Jewish Scriptures, verse 14 here. This day shall be for you as a memorial. Let's look at Rashi's notes down here, and ye shall celebrate it. So he says, the day that is a memorial for you, ye shall celebrate it. But we have not yet heard which is the day of memorial. Therefore Scripture states, remember this day when ye went out of Egypt. And that's in Exodus 3. We learn that the day of the Exodus is the day of memorial. Now, on what day did they go out of Egypt? Therefore, Scripture states, on the day after the Passover they went out. Numbers 33:3. I must therefore say that the 15th of Nisan is the day of the festival, because the night of the 15th they ate the Passover sacrifice, and in the morning they went out. So let's take a look at Numbers 33, verse 3 that was cited by Rashi. He says, or the scriptures state, and they departed from Ramsey in the first month on the 15th day of the month. On the morrow, after the Passover of the children of Israel, went out with a high hand in the sight of all the Egyptians. So the Israelites left on the 15th day. We already saw that the Passover is killed in the evening of the 14th. The blood is applied to the doorpost and the lintel, and they eat the Passover on the 15th in the evening, and that is the same night that Jehovah passes through Egypt, kills the firstborn. And if we come down here to verse 30, we see, and Pharaoh rose up in the night, he and all his servants and all the Egyptians, and there was a great cry in Egypt, for there was not a house where there was not one dead. And he called for Moses and Aaron by night, and said, rise up and get you forth from among my people, both ye and the children of Israel, and go and serve Jehovah, as ye have said. Take your flocks and your herds, as ye have said, and be gone, and bless me also. And the Egyptians were urgent upon the people. Now remember that the Israelites had just eaten their Passover with staff in hand, shoes on their feet, and in haste. Why? Because they were getting out of Egypt that night. As Numbers 33 states, and they departed from Ramses on the 15th day of the first month, the day after the Passover. The Egyptians were urgent upon the people that they might send them out in haste, that they might send them out of the land in haste, urgent, in haste, staff in hand, shoes on feet, for they said, we be all dead men. And the people took their dough before it was leavened, their kneading troughs being bound up, and their clothes upon their shoulders. And the children of Israel did according to the word of Moses, and they borrowed of the Egyptians jewels of silver and jewels of gold and raiment. This was given under the chapter previous. And Jehovah gave the people favor in the sight of the Egyptians, so that they lent unto them such things as they required, and they spoiled the Egyptians. And the children of Israel journeyed from Ramses to Succoth. Now, this has become an issue. People have argued with me and said, how can 600,000 footmen, it says, and the children of Israel journeyed from Ramses to Succoth, about 600,000 on foot that were men, beside the children. So we're talking about probably 1 to 2 million people here total. Also, there was a mixed multitude with them. So logistically now, some people have said, well, this can't happen in that same night. There's no way. Well, there is a way. Ramses to Succoth is not that far. All they were doing is making their start. Ramses to Succoth is not but a few miles. And the reason they went to Succoth is because there was a large contingent of Israelites that were waiting there, that they got from that place also. So it's not impossible. Like I said earlier with Nicodemus and Joseph of Arimathea, you would be amazed, and you know from your own examples, what a man can do when he really wants to do it. They were already ready, and it wasn't a difficult task. Okay, down here in verse 41, and it came to pass at the end of 430 years, even the selfsame day it came to pass, that all the host of Jehovah went out from the land of Egypt. This was a promise to Abraham, back when he told him the nation, that his descendants would dwell in a land not their own, and that they would serve in bondage, and he would deliver them. The selfsame day. It is a night. Not 2 nights, not 3 nights, a night. 1 night to be much observed unto Jehovah for bringing them out from the land of Egypt. This is that night of Jehovah to be observed of all the children of Israel in their generation. It was one night, not a series of nights. That night, they ate the Passover, ready to go. The Egyptians drove them out as quickly as they can. And so it's clear from this, the Passover was killed, it said earlier, on the 14th day in the evening. It is then cooked and prepared. Remember the exception to the Sabbath day, except that which you must do to eat. That was allowed. And then they ate it that evening. The Lord passed over that the middle of that night. The Egyptians, right after that, drove Israel out as quickly as they could. They gave them whatever they wanted. Just get out. Just get out. It is a night. It is not the 14th. If the 14th started in the morning, and then the late afternoon was when they killed the Passover, and the 14th is from morning to morning, that means that that night would have been the night of the 14th. Clearly says they left on the 15th. And this is the day that starts the Feast of Unleavened Bread. And it's just solid. There's no way you can get around this. If you know the law, if you are reasonable, if you are honest, there is no other way to get around this. It's very clear from this example that the day started that evening. Anyways, we'll wrap this up. I hope that this video has been a blessing to you, and that we are clear that Israel left on the 15th day of the first month, that we are clear that a day biblically starts in the evening and runs through the next evening. May Jehovah bless you and keep you. Please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you.